Hello. In the Crown of Aragon, 639 years ago, it was April 23rd, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Molt Cara Companiona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. Let's begin today's document. Today's document is one from the Cartas. So the last time we had one of these, it was not too long ago, April 15th. And this particular document, like that one, is an example of how occasionally the documents that were sent out to the various recipients, they were returned to the archive for whatever reason. And so you can see them folded up there. You can see the creases. You can see the stain from the wax that was applied to enclose and seal the letter. And there's not a ton of these. Well, maybe there are, but they haven't really been digitized as much, and they're not as well sorted, and so it takes a while to find out, what they are and where they are, so on and so forth. It's a lot more work on the part of the archivists to be able to put them together and get them ready for digitization. And so there's just a few of them from this year sent by Joan. I think that we don't really have any sent by Violante. So the place that I'm getting these from is from an archive in Aragon. So present-day province of Aragon. There's an archive called the Fondo Histórico de Aragon. And they have made a useful website that has holdings from the archive of the Crown of Aragon. Some of them, I think, might be duplicated on Pares, but a lot of them are not. And so this particular document I don't think is available on Pares. All right, the one on April 15th, it was really clean and undamaged. The one that we looked at on April 15th, that was also from the same archive, the Fondo Histórico de Aragon, it was something that looked like it had never been sent out because it was just so well preserved. I mean, it could have been. But now this one today, if you look at the picture of it, you can really see it's been torn on the edges. It's just got wear and tear, so you can tell that it passed through some hands and had a bit of a journey outward and then back to the archive. The first carta that I talked about on the podcast was on January 18th, and I was so gratified because I was able to find the copy of that outgoing carta in a register that had been digitized on Pares. And it was like the archive nerd in me just was so happy to be able to reunite the Chancery copy with the copy that was sent out. And so I was hoping that I could do that for the subsequent cartas that came up. But the last one from April 15th, I spent so much time looking to try to find it in the registers and I couldn't. And then this one, I just said to myself, I've got to be disciplined about my time. And so I only looked at register 1890, the Gratiarum register, to see if it would be in there, and it was not. So maybe I'll come across it at some other point, but I'm afraid that for this particular carta, as well as the one on April 15th, they are going to have to await some further technological developments before they can be reunited in the digital sphere. And what I mean is that if I had been able to get the money to and also be willing to use the environmental resources to run all of the registers through the OpenClaw pipeline that I set up using AI to do automatic text recognition, then I would be able to keyword search all of them, all of the registers from Joan, and I'd be able to find this document. And I know that because when I searched for certain words that appear in this document, like what I tried to do was identify words that I thought automatic text recognition would really be okay with. Like it would be able to read with some accuracy, and it wouldn't be too difficult. So what I chose was the phrase on line, line 5. So, de certa scientia, of certain knowledge. And so I typed in certa scientia, and a bunch of documents came up. This is a phrase that is used quite frequently in the Chancery records, and the automatic text recognition had picked it up in a bunch of documents, at least a dozen documents, from the registers that I had put through the OpenClaw pipeline. And I went through those, and sadly none of them were this particular document in the Chancery. By the way, I think it's good to review at this point, just for anybody that's coming to the podcast just starting around now. Well, you might not know, but the practice of the Chancery was that every single document that was being mailed out, sent out for delivery, it would first be copied. It would be copied into the particular register that matched its level of security. So secret seal versus commune, or the type of document it is. So gratiarum would be for grants and privileges. And so what we have is a record of all of these outgoing documents because those Chancery copies survived over 600 years, and in some cases over 700 years. So the Archive of the Crown of Aragon is a pretty amazing resource for research and understanding a lot about the late Middle Ages. It's just astonishing how much abundance there is. Another key aspect of this is the amount of paper that was available. So what you'll notice is that these documents, they're not on parchment, they're on paper. In the 14th century, the Crown of Aragon had a gigantic supply of paper, and it allowed them to establish a kind of bureaucratic practice in their growing state apparatus, and they were able to use documentation way more abundantly and effectively than a lot of other realms in that particular time period. The reason that there was so much paper is because paper-making technology had spread across Silk Road trade networks all through Dar al-Islam, the territories that were united under Muslim rule. So, not to say they had one single sovereign leader, but it was a cultural zone that allowed for a lot of interconnection and a lot of transfer of technological knowledge. And so because Iberia was almost entirely under Muslim rule for several centuries, paper-making technology was able to spread to Iberia. And then in the centuries that followed the Muslim rule, in which Christian polities were conquering, gaining territory, back and forth, kind of a shifting frontier, well, the paper-making picked up. It continued to be popular. I mean, it's helpful to have a lot of paper, and especially in the city of Játiva in the region of Valencia, there was a lot of paper making that would just supply just all over the Iberian territory. So basically it's within the Crown of Aragon, this eventually, not right away, but the town of Játiva. And so that's where a lot of this paper is coming from. And so, yeah, that's why we've got this documentation. All right, so that's a little bit of a review of this project and the archival resources that it depends on. Let's talk about this document in particular. What we're seeing here is Joan responding to some trouble. The trouble is taking place in the province of Aragon, and it appears that there's confusion about who is supposed to be collecting taxes from the communities that are religious minority communities. So the aljamas, that are the Jewish communities and the Muslim communities. In line 3, there's the pairing of Judeos e Sarracenos. And that, it's actually in line 2, in the middle of it. De negociis Judeorum et Sarracenorum collectis. Okay, administrationibus. All right, so the business of collecting taxes from Jews and Muslims. Part of the explanation for why there is this jurisdictional conflict is that the tradition of taxing religious minority communities is one that is centuries old in Iberia. It does go back to the time of Muslim rule, like paper making, and under Muslim rule, the other Abrahamic faith groups, the Jews and the Christians, they had special protection, but also a special tax called the jizya. And the Muslim political leaders would tax these communities differently, but also protect them more forcefully. So this was part of the tradition that had grown out of early Islam, a certain respect for the other religions of Abrahamic lineage. The respect that was given to Jews and Christians under Muslim rule was not given to pagans or other religious groups. So this tradition lasted for centuries, and then when Christians conquer the various Muslim areas bit by bit in what's known as the quote-unquote Reconquista, the reconquering, in the Middle Ages, in the high to late Middle Ages, what happens is the Muslim communities are demanding that they have a similar kind of connection, The Jewish communities want to maintain their existing connection that they had under Muslim rule. And it also benefits the new political leaders because they're able to get a direct line of taxation that doesn't have to pass through other hands like municipal governments or regional governors. So basically what we have by the time we get to the late 14th century with Joan and Violante is a system where the religious minority communities have a direct line of taxation to the royal family. And this really benefits the royal family a whole lot. And actually, they start to be referred to as the religious minority communities start to be referred to colloquially as the royal treasure. Like, these groups of people are the treasure, the royal treasure. And so the monarchs are incentivized very greatly to maintain this system. And in the transition from Père the Ceremonious to the reign of Joan and Violante, it appears that there is some stress being put onto that. Like it seems some people in the realm who are using the transition to do their own thing, to kind of try to get some kind of additional taxation of the religious minority communities and to maybe make inroads on what had been closed off to them as a source of revenue. So we're talking about municipal governments, we're talking about local lords, anybody who is taxing anybody in these realms would say, ooh, it's a moment of transition. Maybe I can just, get away with starting to tax some of the people in my proximity. And Joan had to issue this proclamation, which went out to, I think, a lot of different recipients all over Aragon, to say that no one is allowed to collect taxes from the religious minority communities, from the Jews and the Muslims, and that the administration of this tax collection is the responsibility of the designated royal official whose name appears in the middle of the document. So let's see here. In line 7, in the middle, we have the name Garcia Lupi de Sese. That I did not even notice, I have to be honest. As I was looking at this document, I just didn't even... That capital G, it should have tipped me off that was a name of a place or a person, but it all just kind of blended together in a block of intimidating Latin, and I didn't even notice it. And it really was the AI large language model chatbots that identified this person as Garcia Lopez de Sese, who does appear in a bunch of secondary literature. Not this early, though. He played a large role in the succession crisis that happened after the death of Joan's brother, Martí, and that's in 1415, so several decades into the future. But here, he's identified as Nostra Mayor Domo, the major domo, the person who has the kind of leadership of the house. It's not literal. It's not like this guy is in charge of Joan's actual household. It's a title. And Garcia Lopez de Sese is probably living in the province of Aragon, going around and making sure that the taxation of the Jews and Muslims is proceeding according to how it is supposed to be proceeding. And, if the reign is going okay, and if the transition to power was great, then really, would you need to write this document? I just don't think so. I think that if you had had a smooth transition to power, if it had been one in which, the outgoing king, the dying king, had, bolstered the heir, then you probably wouldn't have the confusion and the testing of boundaries that's going on, that this document had to step in and attempt to correct. So I think we're seeing evidence here of the local power brokers noticing that there's a certain kind of weakness and an opportunity. And maybe they've heard the rumors that Joan's capacity is limited by illness. Maybe they're dismissing it as just rumors. Maybe the apparatus of the state is so strong and there's so many royal officials like Garcia Lopez de Sese that the local lords and local power brokers and municipal officials, they'll back off as soon as they receive this warning. Maybe, it doesn't take much to reassert the power of the state. Or maybe this is tumultuous. Maybe all of these local officials are not going to be stopped so easily. Maybe the governance of the Crown of Aragon is a really difficult thing to manage, no matter who it is. And maybe the centrifugal forces that we see here are ones that really a massive challenge for anybody to manage, much less someone who is operating at a diminished capacity due to persistent illness. An illness of which we see nothing in this document, of course, because, it would, if he mentioned anything like that in a document like this, it would just be like, hey, by the way, don't pay attention to this at all. You can get away with anything. So this document is a demonstration of the force of the monarch being exerted with as much effectiveness as he can muster to have those lesser officials and nobles and whoever to stop testing the boundaries. And so we're going to see in a document like this absolutely nothing that admits any kind of weakness or hesitancy whatsoever. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt Cara Companiona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I've done my job. Remember, the motto of the Historian's Notebook is dissatisfaction guaranteed. And my goodness, I'm really feeling that today because I so want to reunite this outgoing letter with its chancery copy. If only. Oh, that would make me so happy. But, well, dissatisfaction guaranteed. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, and listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.